What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Overcast Podcast, episode number 2. I'm Dono. Joined with me is my host, Billy Kyle.
What's going on, guys? We've got two different topics for you today. Two pretty hot topics, I would say, right now. First of all is the Mavic 2 Enterprise, and then the second is the Gatwick Airport. So I guess we'll start off first with the Mavic 2 Enterprise. Part of me doesn't even want to talk about the Gatwick Airport. I don't know about you.
No, I don't want to give villains any sort of attention or credence, but I feel like we just can't be quiet about it. We have to say something about it, because otherwise, this for me, and I hate to even bring it up on a podcast, but sort of seems like, gun owners everywhere, anytime something bad happens, everybody gets lumped into this pool of, villains, and it's just really not fair. And that's sort of what's happening over in the UK. So I feel for the people stuck, and I feel for the pilots all around the world that are, waiting to see what happens next.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe how long those people actually were stuck at the airport. I couldn't imagine being one of those people. I was reading through the news articles, and I continued to just see people sitting there on their suitcases, laying down. I mean, especially during the holidays, it just sucks. Funny thing is, just like with drones and law enforcement and doing bad things, I've gotten the cops called on me now 2 times. I guess I didn't tell you this yet, but yesterday I was doing a inspection of a roof. They're going to put solar panels on top of it, and got the cops called on me by the neighbor, and it was actually as I was leaving. So I was leaving, and the cop, I saw him coming down the road, and then me and the guy who I was working the job with actually got a call from the police officer the next day, which was today. So we were talking to him today, and the officer was very understanding. 2 times that I've gotten the cops called on me for doing work, and then people just being worried about the drone. It's been fine. But when you have situations like this where people are obviously trying to do something where they're causing harm, it just sucks.
Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here next. But I know the hot topic right now is the Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual. And this is sort of a sensitive subject for many too, because the Enterprise was just literally released maybe a month and a half or so ago. And I know a lot of people are really excited to get the Mavic 2 Enterprise in their hands. And then DJI pops us with an event. And many were hoping that it was going to be an attachment for the Enterprise, but it was not.
Yeah, so this brings up 3 different things that I have going around in my head. First of all, everybody's upset. I understand that. But you can't imagine that the Enterprise, the Mavic 2 Enterprise, the Zoom, I guess now Mavic 2 Enterprise Zoom, had that many sales. Okay? I mean, it's not like the Mavic 2 Pro where it's affordable and, it's about $500 extra, but I don't think that there was probably a lot of sales on the Enterprise. I don't know. What's your take on that?
So here's my take on that. Being on the commercial side of life as well, and working with a vendor that has been selling these products, I've seen quite a bit of sales, but they're very specialized niche sales. Like we're talking about law enforcement have been looking for us directly. Commercial pilots, like people who are going to be doing like power line inspections or something, have been begging for a small portable option. But I don't even still, the camera that's on the Enterprise, and we're going to talk about this, but I don't think that's quite what they were looking for. But, I don't know. We've sold quite a few Enterprises, but I can't speak for the majority. It's again, when you're dealing with Enterprise, you're dealing with they're buying bulk, and we don't really hear about it or see it because commercial pilots, that's their job. They're just doing their job. They're not going to talk about the products like consumers do.
Yeah, I totally understand that. This kind of brings me to the whole launch of the Dual as well as the Zoom, the Mavic 2 Enterprise Zoom. Both were handled so poorly, and I feel like we always run into this whenever we're looking at some sort of enterprise launch from the enterprise side of DJI. It's like they say through their enterprise Twitter account that, all right, we're releasing something on this day at this time, and then on that day, at that time passes, it gets to 9 a.m. in the morning, which was supposed to be the last release. And everyone's like, oh, what did DJI release? What did they release? And then, a couple days later, we see, oh, the website's been updated. There was no official announcement.
So here's my take on that. And again, it was about 8:30 at night. I was getting ready to do a live stream, and I was handed over some information in regards to this, which was the press release. Now, whether or not that press release was specifically designed to be announced the next day, or it was designed to be released when it was initially supposed to be announced. I think it was on the 19th the release was supposed to be. Was it the 19th? I can't remember, but it doesn't matter. They didn't. So I know a couple of outlets got a hold of this same thing and it started circulating. So I'm not really sure if DJI said, hey, it's already out there. The specs are already there. We can either A, wait until after the holidays and there's zero hype around it and a lot of questions, or we just announce it now and let it go. That's sort of my take on it.
In terms of holiday sales, though, you've got to imagine that nobody's buying this for, a relative or somebody like that. These are people who are actually doing work and want something, that's a little bit more compact and want to do thermal imaging. But another thing that I don't really like is the website layout. I don't know, for some of you guys who might be looking at the website, it's like they've got the Mavic 2 Dual and the Enterprise on the same web page, and you kind of go down and you start scrolling down and you see, for example, I'm on the website, it shows something about zoom in and zoom out. It says the Mavic 2 Enterprise is equipped with a 2x optical, 3x digital zoom camera. So then from there, I'm thinking, okay, if I'm somebody who doesn't know all that much about drones, is this going to be on the Mavic 2 Zoom and the Mavic 2 Dual? But I don't know. I think that the way that they kind of set this up is a little bit sucky. Something that I'm wondering is if the cameras will be hot swappable, if you're going to be able to swap the cameras. So now, in theory, the Mavic 2 Zoom and Mavic 2 Zoom and Mavic 2 Pro cameras are not hot swappable, right? You're supposed to send them back to DJI. They do it for you. But there's been people out there who have just done it themselves. So I wonder if you can do this yourself.
So here's my take on that. And I've actually had some pretty in-depth conversation with people about this. And while people believe that this is going to be the case, my thing is this. These specific enterprise drones are equipped with encrypted enclaves to secure data. I don't think that they would make it to where they would be hot swappable. And I think they're smart enough to put firmware built into the drones as well, not just like to the camera, but to the drone as well, to only accommodate one or the other via serial numbers. So it's going to be somebody's going to attempt it eventually, but I'm just shocked that DJI has, at least with the Mavic 2 Pro and Mavic 2 Zoom, hasn't, nipped that in the butt. And I'm not advocating for them, but it's just shocking like a company would allow you to do that. But when you're dealing with enterprise, encryption is so important, and to allow people to do that, I just think that would be really sketchy. I don't know. That's just my take on it from a security standpoint.
I totally agree with you. I don't think you're going to be able to swap them, even if you figure out a way. I think that when you plug in the camera, or when you finally attach the camera after you swap them, it's going to be like you get no camera view, basically. And I'm actually, thinking about potentially getting into doing thermal, doing, solar panel inspections, hopefully, power line inspections, although that's a little bit more tough to do, a little bit more tough to rake in those clients. But I've already got the Inspire. I'd love to be able to just say purchase a camera that is able to shoot thermal like the XT or the XT2, but those gimbals can only be mounted to the Matrice. So I feel like it's kind of this area where it's limited by the technology. It might fit, but also DJI is just not going to let you for certain purposes. And of course, it's just because they want to make more money, I guess.
So in talking about that, and again, people are looking at this as a thermal capability camera. I think we need to talk about the camera itself for a moment, because there's some confusion here as to what this actually is. So this is a FLIR MSX camera, and it's a multispectral dynamic imaging. And I'm reading this completely off the site specs because I don't have that memorized. But the thing to keep in mind, this is not radiometric by any means.
Yep.
So where the Matrice has the XTs and they have so much more thermal capabilities, this does not quite have that. This is somewhat neutered, and I heard it from somebody. They said the overall height that in which you would be able to get an image that is still somewhat usable with this is about 90 feet high. Now at 24 millimeters, if you're looking at a rooftop of a commercial building, 90 feet really isn't going to be enough to capture the entire roof plus retain details. So I think that's something that many people are going to want to keep in mind, that this is still a SAR unit, and that's search and rescue.
And I think that that's like the one thing when the Mavic 2 Zoom came out, they were like, oh, no thermal option. This is going to be terrible for search and rescue. I do agree with you. I think that this is more for search and rescue cases because it's a smaller drone. You're able to just put it up in the air really fast. And I think that's the one thing that they really market on their website, just going down. They do talk about search and rescue, being able to find certain people through the woods, things like that at nighttime especially. They do highlight a little bit on being able to look at buildings. I'm looking at right here. And of course they have, being able to see what the temperature is in certain areas, everything that a lot of the XT cameras and the XT2 cameras are able to do. But I'm looking at some of the specs here, right? And the field of view of the thermal camera is 57 degrees with an aperture of 1.1. So it is letting in quite a bit of light. But you look at the image size, right? It's very low resolution. The 16:9 aspect ratio, it's going to be 640 by 360. And then that second camera you get, which makes it the dual camera, right? It's a 12 megapixel shooter. So it's essentially kind of like what you get on the zoom, but without any zoom capabilities. I'd be interested to see like raw footage and see what it actually looks like raw videos and things like that. But I'm also looking at the photos, and you can only shoot JPEG, so you can't shoot raw, although I guess that's not a big deal.
No, I don't think that's really a big deal, at least for thermal. But we'll have to see when it comes out and enough of people have it in their hands and start doing the testing on it, because the camera itself is interesting. You would have thought that they would have also maybe lowered the aperture on the main shooter, because I heard it can simultaneously shoot RGB and thermal images as well. So yeah, that's super important for multiple reasons. But I think like if I had to choose like right out of the gate, I would have wanted this first. Like when I think of like enterprise, thermal for some reason just like comes to mind first. And I wouldn't have really wanted the zoom capability. I would have rather had thermal, because I think if I'm searching for somebody at night, the spotlights are great. But if you find somebody, I would have rather had the speaker on there and then have the thermals to say, hey, are you okay? Can you give me like some sort of signal, and then make it out with the thermal? That would have made much more sense. I don't know. I think they sort of missed the boat with the first one. But I mean, I don't know. That's just my take on it though.
No, I do agree, and I think that it's kind of like with all these releases where we see like the Phantom 4 Pro and then the Phantom 4 Advanced later. It's like, why not just release both of these drones at the same exact time? It makes me wonder if they still were working on the Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual, and they had the Mavic 2 Enterprise Zoom ready first, and they said, okay, let's just ship this out and start, maybe bringing in money, bringing in income, however you want to look at it. But again, if they were to release these side by side, or even release the Dual first, I think it would be like a wow factor. Being able to put a thermal camera that's that small on a drone that small, I think it would make a lot of people's heads turn more than it would so for the Zoom.
Yeah, and here's the thing I think too is like price wise, we're talking about $2,600 to $1,999, so $2,699. So we have almost a $700 difference between both units for the thermal capability, and that's also sans any sort of discounts that people who are buying these in bulks may be getting. Because we're dealing with like, let's say, large departments that may say, hey, I want 6 or 7 units. They may get a enterprise style discount from whether it be the vendor or DJI themselves. Really tough to say. We don't see all the back end billing and the POs that happen from the state, but I'm almost certain that they probably would be more than happy to sell these in bulk. But I guess there still is a use case scenario for the main enterprise, because obviously we have encryption and everything else that goes along with it. So I'm not saying that the first one is totally trash, but if you even wanted the remote chance of thermal capabilities, I think this was it. And I think this also sort of puts a nail in the coffin that we're not going to see a thermal attachment for a while for the first enterprise.
Yeah, but I think it would just be silly to have an attachment on the top. Like, I don't know exactly how they make it work.
Okay, so let's think about it. We have 9 FPS that these thermal cameras shoot.
Yeah,
and that's 9 FPS so it's not stabilized. So you're going to put that on top of the Mavic Enterprise, which already sort of rocks back and forth. You would have to have a crazy stable image. I think it would be just unusable at that point.
Yeah, and I think, you know what, we should probably move on because we've been talking about this for a little bit, because I guess the last thing I want to close out by saying, and we probably should have started off by saying this, is that these drones are the same in terms of flight time, modularity, controller, everything. The only difference is the camera. So I guess probably just throw that out there.
Yeah, they are, and there's not a lot to spend on that, really.
Yeah, and I think the enterprise line is great. I love to see them try to focus on drones that are a little bit less expensive for people who might like want to just get into the game and kind of get their foot wet in terms of commercial drone flying. But also I think that they have a niche with other people who've been flying drones forever because they're so small. So now let's move on to the Gatwick Airport whole situation, right? It sucks to even talk about, but I don't know. I've just been following it a little bit here and there. But honestly, just because not even want to talk about it, I really haven't paid that much attention to it.
So So I heard this story a couple of days ago, and I started seeing the flights delayed. And there was chatter on Twitter about drones being spotted at the UK's second largest airport, which is Gatwick. Now, I scoured Twitter and the internet to find any shred of evidence that there was a drone ever on site at this airport. And if anybody's out there, feel free to drop a comment below with a link of the actual drone that these suspects were flying. But I just find it so incredibly shocking that with all the cameras, all the security technology on these airports, that they can detect it, but not actually have, an image of it for anybody to see or identify.
It could also potentially have come up on the radar. I don't know if they're able to see something that small. And also, again, if we're talking about something like the Mavic 2 Enterprise, which I'm sure they weren't flying an Enterprise or a Matrice drone, they're going to be able to actually communicate with the tower and local aircraft. But I just think just as a whole, it makes drones look terrible. I mean, just me with family, friends, everybody knows that I'm into drones, and they're all like, oh, did you hear what happened at Gatwick Airport? And again, just like you, there's really no actual visual evidence that there was a drone flying around there. And I almost feel like all of us as drone pilots are like, no, it wasn't a drone. But it really does, after they arrested the two people, it really does make me wonder exactly what happened and what their motives were.
So they arrested a 50-year-old woman and a 47-year-old man on suspicion of disrupting flight in the Gatwick Airport. So that's pretty critical. There was stories and talk of the fact that the two were actually in a van and they kept moving locations every time somebody got close to closing in on them, which would make sense. The other thing is, I think we can probably impossibly rule out the fact that this was a DJI unit, because they had the utilities on site to detect these drones. And I think if it was one of the more mainstream units, we would have been able to detect them. I'm pretty sure that depending on what their operation was, this very well could have been some form of FPV drone. And again, I'm not trying to cast doubt on any sector of the drone community, but I think they would have been able, if it was a GPS drone, I think they would have been able to locate it much faster, and this wouldn't have dragged on quite like it did.
Yeah, and just for anybody out there watching, we pre-record these episodes, so we're actually talking about this currently on Saturday, December 22nd, and I'm sure we are probably going to get some more info about this whole entire situation come out soon. But again, I think just right now, until we really figure out exactly what their motives were, exactly what they were using to actually interfere with air traffic, I guess which drone it was, it's just not worth talking about, in my opinion.
So I'm not sure if we have any UK viewers that are in the area of the Gatwick Airport or were in the airport during this time that had a flight possibly delayed. But on behalf of the entire responsible drone community, I apologize. We apologize. This is not who we represent, and the greater majority of pilots are flying for good. There's a lot of good that drones can do and will do in the future. And this is just an egregious act by two absolute idiots, and there's just no other way to put it. I don't know what their motive was, but there was 1,000+ flights delayed. That's just terrible.
Yeah, there's two major incidents. I would say the worst incidents that have happened with drones, and they've happened within a couple weeks of each other. First was the drone colliding with the flight going to Mexico, landing in Mexico, and now this being shutting down a whole entire airport.
So with the Mexican incident, we have yet to find any hard evidence that there was actually a drone. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a drone pilot and I advocate for this hobby, but the fact is, if you hit something hard enough, whether it be plastic, metal, wood, whatever, there are going to be remnants of that lodged in the hull of that plane. And they have yet to pull anything hard out of that plane. That one is perplexing at best, because there's nothing that indicates that a drone was there. I mean, and the amount of damage that really did to the whole, that's just insane. I mean, the plane was probably coming in at about 250 miles an hour, I think. And I don't know, that just seems weird.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw the photo, my jaw dropped at how huge the gash was in the front of that plane. And yeah, you're totally right. Thinking about it, you'd be able to see some sort of remnants of either the drone inside of the hull of the plane, or you'd be able to find at least some sort of damage that would tell you whether it's, say, a bird, or whether it's, say, a drone, or anything else that could have hit. I mean, I guess those are the two biggest factors. But again, you'd be able to tell right there, probably on site, or with maybe just a little bit of detective work, what actually hit that plane.
So here's something that I want to flip over to you all, the viewers. Christmas time's coming up. Drones are obviously a hot item to purchase for people as gifts. I'm not telling you to police anybody. That's definitely not what I'm doing. But as pilots, as responsible enthusiasts of this hobby, it is your duty to help educate, not criticize people, but educate them, show them how to fly responsibly. Make them aware of Kitty Hawk and air maps. Tell them that there are rules that they have to follow. Now, if you're buying a DJI drone, they do a pretty good job of making you take that quiz and sort of telling you that, hey, you sort of have to, have an understanding of what you're doing. But educate somebody. And if you're a parent buying a drone for your child for the very first time, please sit down with them, have the talk.
No, I do agree with everything that you said, though. I think that it's really important for people to fly safely. And again, man, I really dislike those people who try to police others on the internet, especially where the trolls live is Facebook. I swear. Join any drone Facebook group. They're there.
And speaking of Facebook groups, if you haven't already, please join the DJI workshop, link in the description below. But no, seriously, and we're not telling you to police anybody. I think a lot of that really has to happen as you all as viewers and have friends. That needs to happen like offline. Nothing productive in conversation sometimes happens online. Unless if you're watching us, then this is very productive. But please, just take care of friends that want to learn how to fly but have no idea, because I'll tell you, I didn't have any idea when I first picked up a drone that there was rules, and that's just because you just don't know what you don't know.
Yep, exactly. So I guess that pretty much wraps up everything that we want to talk about in this podcast. Touched on the Dual, the Enterprise Dual. I think it's a great drone. I love to see that DJI is going down this path of modularity and also coming out with different versions to kind of suit different people's needs. But again, I think that in order to really drop the bomb with this, they should have put out two products at once, the Zoom and the Dual at the same time, and I think that would have been a little bit better. I don't understand why people are all that mad, because I think that if someone buys the Enterprise, they've probably got the cash to buy the Dual if they really needed it.
It's just sort of funny how many consumers are really like wrapped up with this release of the Enterprise products, because the fact is they are very much Enterprise and they're meant to assist rescue workers and the commercial pilots that should absolutely have these products in their hands. So, if you're a consumer pilot, just relax, hang out. I'm sure after CES, we will see some brand new products that will be most interesting for you all, no doubt.
Yeah, so I guess I know that pre-orders are out right now, but do you have like a hard release date for the Dual? Do you know?
I don't have a hard release date on the Dual when it's actually going to start shipping. But I would imagine it's going to be shortly after the second week of the year. That's my guesstimation as of right now of 2019.
Okay.
I don't think we'll have anything shipping in 2018. That's just a guesstimation.
Yeah, no, that is a good guess. I think that right now there's a ton of, actually not a ton, but there's a good amount of content out on it right now. Some stuff you guys can go and check out. It's not like the Mavic 2 Pro where they're going to give everybody a drone, every influencer. But again, there are some units out there. So if you guys want to learn some more information, we don't have the drone yet. Hopefully we get one soon. Maybe you or I. That'd be really fun. But again, there's a ton of resources out there if you guys want to go and check them out.
So I think that's going to wrap up this episode of the Overcast Podcast. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us, watching. We will be back again next Sunday, same time, same place, Billy and myself.
Yeah, and one thing that I do want to hear from you guys is, first of all, of course, what you guys thought of the podcast, but also what you thought of us premiering this episode. So we weren't able to premiere the first one. We couldn't premiere that first episode because when we uploaded it, I think we had 11 subscribers. So now, again, pooling some of our subscribers together, hopefully we had a good amount of people in here watching. We were in here chatting it up with you guys. So it should have been pretty fun. And, I'm kind of saying this as it hasn't happened already. But anyway, guys, we hope that you enjoyed the Overcast Podcast. And as always, we'll talk to you later.
Oh, shit. Let me stop. We will see you next time, guys. Word.